What the f*** are you staring at, you knobhead? Hello everybody, welcome back to Business Blaze. This video of Business Blaze is brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creators like me, maybe like you, with thousands of classes in design, business, and more. Ooh, business. That's the thing we do here. Skillshare is giving away a free trial of premium membership. If you click the link in the description box below, that's for the first 1,000 people only. Oh, that's a lot of people. Please go sign up to Skillshare. I want to get it so someone clicks on that link and it's like, too late. 1,000 have gone. I mean, we could dream. Hopefully. Come on! More on them in a bit. This is all about, I don't actually know, Sir Shifty. I've really stopped even glancing at these ahead. I'm like, Danny, just do your thing. I'll read whatever you make. Sir Shifty, the fallen king of the high street. Oh, I hope this is about the BHS guy, Philip Green. Is BHS Philip Green? He sold it for like £1 to avoid a whole bunch of fees or something, or like to stop it so he didn't have to pay people's pensions allegedly or something like that. No one likes him. Everyone thinks he's a cockface. He's kind of like, who else is that big cockface? He's Australian though. Rupert Murdoch. No one likes Rupert Murdoch either. I think people used to like Sir Philip Green. I can see it in bold here. It is about him. But now everyone thinks he's a cock. I'm not really sure why. I don't really read the news that much. Let's have a look. Allegedly. There's going to be a lot of allegedly. Maybe he's litigious. It seems a shame that for every genuinely inspiring and admirable business tycoon you'll ever see in the UK, there's at least another 10 that you would quite happily toss overboard a very expensive yacht and into the waiting jaws of a great white shark who missed out on his breakfast. Not everyone can be a legend like Richard Branson. Who, I mean, Richard Branson's done some controversial stuff, but overall, he's such a massive legend. And I feel like whenever he does something controversial, he's like, yeah, it was me. Because he's a legend. And Sir Philip Green very probably falls into the latter category. Hailed in some quarters as the king of the UK high street. Isn't that the Spanish guy who owns everything? He's now the like, what's the Spanish word for king? Perona is crown. The king has corona. Oh, I'm hilarious.
Oh my god, are you like speaking Mexican?
The angry old billionaire with a permatan and a motor mouth has also been given the less flattering nickname Sir Shifty in more recent years, and is considered in some circles to be the British version of Donald Trump. And it's actually quite a fitting comparison in more ways than one, although Sir Philip Green has yet to be elected Prime Minister, and he has slightly better hair. I like to think, at least in the UK, we're not going to be elected someone like Trump, because we're far too stuffy for that. And you know the other reasons why, you don't want Trump to be in charge. But how did a self-made billionaire from the wrong side of the tracks end up raking in a personal fortune of nearly $6 billion from little more than the gift of the gab? So he's also worth quite a lot more money than Trump. Why is the reputation and bank balance of this party-loving friend to superstar celebrities, knight of the realm and advisor to UK governments taken quite a brutal battering lately? How did he manage to take a beloved British institution and bleed it dry before selling it for £1 and scarpering? See, I knew about this. And more importantly, does this unacceptable face of capitalism really have the habit of trying to run over journalists with his golf buggy while screaming at them to f*** off? Oh, shit. Allegedly. That's why we're asking it. It's a question that we're going to explore, Phil. Well, for starters, it's only Mr. Green. Isn't it Sir Green? We called him Sir Shifty. So does he have a knighthood or not? Because he's not Mr. Is he Mr.? Did he have it taken away? Oh, did he have it taken away?
Doth mine eyes betray me? 'Tis the nefarious dark night.
You have to do something really bad to have it taken away, like be a paedophile or a murderer or something. No, he's still got his knighthood, Sir Philip Nigel Ross Green. It's like they gave him 4 names, and they're all the most boring names you could think of. He's only worth $2.2 billion. Oh yeah, because he was once worth $6 billion, and now he's not. Oh, but we can call him Mr. Green if you like, Danny, because everyone thinks he's a cock. Who likes to tell the origin of being born on the wrong side of the tracks. I'm going to call him Mr. Green. Oh, Danny explains it. I should read these ahead. Mr. Green throughout this whole script, partly because it makes him sound like a silly character from the game Cluedo, but mainly because I can't bring myself to reportedly call him Sir Philip, a controversial title which suggests respect, and which many now believe that he should have been stripped from him long ago. Did they consider stripping him Oh my god, his controversy section is long. Knighted. In 2016, the House of Commons approved a motion asking the Honours Forfeiture Committee. Wow, there's a committee for deciding whether people get their titles taken away. That's great. To recommend knighthood be cancelled and annulled. 100 MPs voted in favour of the motion. That's a lot of them. The first time MPs ever proposed someone being stripped of a knighthood. This wasn't binding, and he paid £363 million into a pension scheme in 2017, and in 2018 they decided not to take away his knighthood. Wow. So it seems so he paid £363 million into the pension scheme of BHS, which was the company that he sold for £1, and he gets to keep his knighthood. Like, that's a lot of money. I'll be like, no, take it away. It's not worth it. Mr. Green was actually born into a fairly affluent middle-class Jewish family in 1952 in Croydon, South London, and was packed off to an expensive boarding school called Carmel College, often referred to as the Jewish Eton. I've never heard of it. But credit where it's due. He still started off with relatively little in comparison to the absolute fortune that he was destined to make. Yeah, but then don't say that you started out with nothing. There was certainly no sign of a small loan of $1 million from his rich dad. In fact, Green was only 12 years old when his opiate-addicted dad died of a heart attack, and after failing to graduate from Carmel College, a young Green started his working life helping out on the forecourt of a petrol station managed by his mum. By the age of 21, Green had set his sights on fashion retail, and he'd launched his first small business importing cheap jeans from the Far East and then selling them onto London retailers at inflated prices. In fact, he spent most of the 1970s snapping up bulk stock at bargain basement prices from struggling international clothes retailers and then passing them on to thriving UK independent stores and market stall traders, but often with mixed results. Okay, so he started a business. It's not revolutionary, but he's obviously good at it. Green once made a packet by buying the entire stock of 10 different clothing retailers which had all gone into receivership, with the only problem being that the neglected stock was a bit old and dusty. This was no problem for the entrepreneurial Green, who had it all dry cleaned, wrapped everything up in polythene to make it look brand new, and then rented a temporary shop to shift it all at high-end prices. But everything worked out quite so well. Even during these relatively early years, Mr. Green had developed a reputation for quickly falling out with suppliers and colleagues and employers if they didn't dance to his tune. Employers? They'd be like, hey boss, why are you doing things my way? I don't know, because I'm the f***ing boss, you knob.
I'm in charge.
Do you feel in charge?
And he quickly went through a hectic period of starting up a new company, driving it to bankruptcy, and then quickly starting up another completely new business with fresh faces to take its place. But he certainly seemed to have a talent for drumming up investment in the face of adversity. By the early 1980s, Green, I don't like when people abuse bankruptcy law. I do think bankruptcy, like corporate bankruptcy, is a very good thing because it encourages like a liquid market and for people to take risks and all of this stuff and start big businesses. But when it's like you've gone through 10 of them in like 10 years, should be like, look, maybe this isn't for you. Although clearly it was for Philip Green because he earned a load of money. By the early 1980s, Green had decided to up his game with his first celebrity endorsement. He got 1 million pairs of jeans produced on the cheap in Hong Kong and then persuaded the actress Joan Collins to stick her name on them so he could flog them for £16.95 each. You could buy a pair of jeans in Tesco for £16.95 today. So, the past money was worth more. It was an odd pairing, which didn't turn out to be a particularly good fit, but a boom boom. Oh, I recorded a video the other day. There wasn't a single but a bump bump tss. Either I just was missing all the puns or it wasn't very funny. The glamorous star of Dynasty, I've never heard of Joan Collins. I've never heard of Dynasty. Was pushing 50 at the time and had never been known for wearing jeans, least of all cheap jeans knocked up in Hong Kong. In fact, she later decided the very idea of wearing jeans was tragic. Joan Collins' jeans faded to... Oh, they actually named them after her, so it wasn't like she wears them. They are named after her. Woo! They failed to capture the attention of teen shoppers and unsurprisingly turned out to be a massive flop in much the same way that Angela Lansbury lingerie would be unlikely to fly off the hangers. I have no idea who Angela Lansbury is. Okay, I'm just going to look this up because it's probably going to be entertaining. Yes, I see why. She's 95 years old. Oh, she is good for 95 though. But the 80s wasn't all bad news for Mr. Green. It was during this era that he discovered what turned out to be possibly his greatest strength in business, the art of scrapping out risky and complex deals that nobody else would dare touch. His party trick was to seek out a company in massive debt and heading for inevitable bankruptcy, sweet-talk the creditors into holding off collection, and then generate fresh investments and loans which would be pumped into the floundering company that had managed to buy for peanuts until it started turning a profit again. And this seems like a great idea. Yeah, I mean, if you can do that, you're going to make a lot of money. Or to put it more concisely, he became the master of the leveraged buyout. Oh, Danny, look at all these fancy business words. Leveraged buyout. Supply and demand. Cost something analysis. Mr. Green's first major success came with the acquisition of Gene Genie in 1895. He seemed fixated on genes at this point, but it was a fixation that served him well. After buying the collapsing company for just £65,000, Green had managed to sell it for £7 million within the space of just a year, putting him in the big league for the first time. Yeah, no joke. That's 1980's £7 million. I mean, £7 million is a lot of money today. In the 1980s, it was obviously more. Imagine how many jeans you could buy for £16. He invested most of his new fortune into publicly traded discount fashion retailer called Amber Day, which he became chairman and CEO of in 1988. Green spent the next few years riding the crest of a financial wave as he helped ratchet up the company's profits from $5.4 million to $18 million in just a few years. But the wheels fell off in 1992 when the company failed to meet its ambitious profit forecast, and the share price plummeted as a result. Green was ousted by Amber Day's board of directors, and he vowed to never get involved with a public company again. Yeah, this is the thing, like running a public company, you're like, oh, it's a public company. You know, that's great. If you have a company and you take it public, right? You're like, I'm gonna get rich, which is great. But then everything is like, you know, your shareholders get a say, it's public, and all of this bullshit you have to deal with. And it's like, I don't know. If I ran a giant company, I'd be like, I'm not taking that public. I like doing things my way, and I don't like the oversight of like the public. The public can right off. I'm gonna do things how I want. Not that I'd ever be in that position because I'm largely incompetent. But Mr. Green really became a household name when he was announced as the new owner of British Home Stores, more commonly known as just BHS, in the year 2000. To me, BHS was always a bit of a depressing store. Like, it's kind of like a department store. I think they just sell their own shit. I'm not really sure. It's not been around for a very long time. But I remember it as a kid. And I was just like, I don't know, it always seemed a bit grim, kind of dark inside, a bit weird. Like an old smelly shopping centre sort of vibe. Not like run down, just like a bit grim. I don't know how else to describe it. Danny probably knows what I'm talking about. Originally founded in 1928, BHS had become a beloved staple of the UK high street over the previous 70 years. Oh, okay. I guess not. Based very much on the Woolworths model. Yeah, Woolworths is also kind of though, Danny. BHS was famous for selling reasonably priced products of all shapes and sizes in their huge, sprawling stores. It was the one-stop place in town where your mum could pick up some new bedding, your dad could get hold of some light bulbs, and you could go look at all the toys. By the year 2000, though, BHS was beginning to look and feel like an outdated relic from yesteryear as everyone began to get their bedding and light bulbs from Poundland instead. Yeah, it's true. I guess I am much more familiar with the 2000s, where I was 12, 13 in 2000. So I'm much more familiar with this version of BHS than the earlier beloved BHS. I am familiar with Poundland. You get all sorts of wild in Poundland. I used to love that as a kid because you have so little money as a kid. You go into Poundland and you're like, I got £5, like my pocket money or whatever. You could get
Peanut butter and crap.
5 off things in Poundland. It was great. Like, you could get like a big Toblerone sometimes. Mwah! Fortunately, business superhero Mr. Green arrived on the scene with his army of now blindly devoted financial backers to reverse the fortunes of this British institution. Despite vowing never to get involved with public companies again, Green swooped in and bought BHS for £200 million and then changed it into a private company. Legends. That is such a power move where you have so much money, you could take a public company private. It's like, power move. Because it's like, people take companies public to make lots of money, but you're never going to make more money than the company's worth because that's where you got your money. But if you're so successful elsewhere and in other things that you've already got a public, you could buy a public guy's nuts, and I love it. Obviously, he then up. It looked as if the king of the high street had just truly earned his crown. Within just a few years, his £200 million investment was said to be worth £1 billion, as BHS enjoyed a healthy renaissance thanks to the influx of fresh investment. Many consider Mr. Green to have made one of the fastest billions in business history. Talk to that Theranos lady, and then she lost it, but she got there fairly quick. And what about that Kardashian girl? Although I think then they found out that it was not true, allegedly, or something. But yeah, 19 and a billionaire. God damn! Oh, I'm so unsuccessful. Over the years, some journalists dared to question if the new valuation of the company was entirely realistic. It's a private company. And Mr. Green seemed to have very short views when it came to journalists poking their noses into his affairs. Over the years, he's been filmed aggressively pushing and shoving journalists out of his path while hurling profanities at them, trying to escape in a golf buggy, and nearly running over a cameraman, and he once briefly seemed to consider squirting a Sky News reporter in the face with a plastic bottle of water before thankfully realizing that this may have looked a bit lame when it inevitably got shown on TV. Yeah, I imagine that's one of the things you do in your mind and you're like, God, I was so cool. It's like, I do whatever I want. And then, you just end up looking like a total knobbo because everyone's like, look, you're really rich and powerful, The journalist isn't. Don't be a dick. When the author Oliver Shah went so far as to try and write an unauthorized biography on Mr. Green, he found himself plagued with endless late-night rambling phone calls from his subjects, which often concluded with Green threatening to smack the author in the f***ing mouth or throw him through the f***ing window. I'm just gonna throw an allegedly there just in case. Allegedly. However, Mr. Green was forced into making a rare apology after The Guardian's financial editor Paul Murphy ran a piece in the paper which studied the finances of BHS and pondered over the true valuation of this billion-dollar success story. Green's hasty response was to call up The Guardian and let rip with an expletive-laden rant which questioned the intelligence of Paul Murphy. Green screamed down the phone, "He's a f***ing idiot! He can't read English! Mind you, he's a f***ing Irishman." Oh my, dude. Getting a bit racist there. Following a rundown of his own interpretation of the figures, Green concluded his rant with, even an Irishman like Paul Murray ought to be able to understand that. The Guardian was so taken aback by Mr. Green's words that they decided to print them on the front page of their next edition. Oh! Oh, prompting anger from Irish shoppers who felt that Green was dismissing them all as illiterate. Yeah, well, he kind of was, wasn't he? Allegedly. Fearing the threat of an Irish boycott of his growing empire, Mr. Green delivered a public apology. It was said in the heat of the moment it was not a general comment. The thing that made him really wish he'd kept his trap shut is that Paul Murphy wasn't even Irish. He was born in Oldham and grew up in Portsmouth. Ha! What a cock. It's time for me. With that, yeah, I don't know how to transition from what a cock to today's sponsor Skillshare, but maybe I could learn transitions on Skillshare. I doubt it, that's really niche, but they do have a lot of other stuff. This video is brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creators with thousands of classes in design, business, transitions, and more. Ooh, not really, I made that up as I went along. But they do have a lot of stuff. Also, what's great about Skillshare, I'm just going to riff off these. I'm going to try and hit all the points because Skillshare always want me to try and get the points in. They're a bit strict with me, but I understand Skillshare because, you know, you want me to get across the best things of your platform, and well, I'm just gonna try my best, okay? The good thing about Skillshare is that when you, I don't know, there's other platforms which it says I can't name, but let's say, in your imagination, you've probably heard of them, or you know about them, where you have to go in and buy a course, right? And it's like, okay, so I wanna take a course on, I don't know, like Adobe Premiere, or whatever, like the program that we use to edit the videos here, and learn how to do stuff. And it's like, okay, I can buy that course. And then it's like, but I really just need to know how to do this specific part about I don't know, exporting the video or something. And you're like, well, I just paid for the whole course, didn't I? So that sucks. But Skillshare, find that course in Premiere or whatever, and they do have tons of stuff about video editing, by the way, and also After Effects, Photoshop, all of that creative Adobe stuff. You can just go in there afterwards, once you've got Skillshare, and just go to that specific part, because you're not paying for each individual course. Skillshare's like a buffet of courses, but not one of those cheap buffets that, you get at the airport breakfast at the breakfast at the hotel next to the airport. But one of those, I've never been to one of these, but in Las Vegas, you get those crazy buffets, which are crazy expensive. And it's there's lobster and crab and filet mignon and all this stuff. Skillshare is the high quality Las Vegas of learning. Oh, we're off the rails, but you guys are getting the point, I hope. Also, if you actually get Skillshare, then they'll be okay, Simon, be free. Do what you want, because clearly it's working. So you know what to do. Support the show. There's a link below. What have I done? Well, I've done some Premiere stuff, although that was a while ago, because now I don't really do that anymore because I can't, because I'm making a lot of videos, so I've got people for that. But in the past I did email productivity from someone called Alexandra Samuel. I did productivity from Thomas Frank because I can't pay people to do productivity for me. Anyway, what are we talking about? There's 8 million people learning with Skillshare. Skillshare is giving away premium membership for the first 1,000 people who click below. It's super affordable. It's $10 a month. That is a deal. That is a deal! Skillshare, wait, why does it say this twice? Oh yeah, because I'm supposed to read it twice. Explore your creativity, first 1,000 people, link below, let's get back to it. Still, despite these bust-ups with the press, that growing empire of Mr. Green's was getting mightier every year, like your skills with Skillshare. He acquired the Arcadia Group, which owns a whole string of UK retail chains, including Burton, Dorothy Perkins, Miss Surface, Miss Selfridge, Wallace, and Topman. Okay, yeah, all of these, I don't know if they're international, but they're all fairly cheap, fast fashion stuff. Burton I used to shop in. It's kind of junky. But here's the funny thing about Mr. Green and Arcadia. It's widely believed that he's the owner of the massive Arcadia group, but this was only true for about 24 hours. He quickly sold it to a woman called Tina Green, and he was happy just to take up a position of CEO of the company. Tina Green is Philip Green's wife. Okay. Very little is known about this mysterious businesswoman other than that she's one of the richest and most powerful women on the planet, on paper at least. She doesn't even live with Mr. Green during the week. From Mondays to Fridays, Mr. Green stays at a swanky hotel in London and then goes to visit his wife at the weekends in Monaco. I see what's going on. She definitely owns this and lives in Monaco because I don't think they pay any taxes in Monaco. When pressed on why his wife chooses to live in Monaco, Mr. Green reveals that someone once told him it was a really nice place to live. That's not the reason. That's not the reason. I like to think that he and Tina enjoy a stroll down Monaco Harbour, pay a visit to the Nouveau Musée National de Monaco, and perhaps even taking a show from time to time at the Opera de Monte Carlo. It's barely worth mentioning the small matter of Monaco just having to be a high-profile tax haven with incredibly lax laws on income tax, capital gains, and dividends. It's got nothing to do with that, allegedly. And of course, Tina wouldn't have to pay any tax on any dividends she might potentially receive from the Arcadia Group in the UK because she was a resident in Monaco. Maybe this is something that occurred to him a bit later on. He's like, oh my, what a joyous coincidence. In the meantime, Mr. Green was enjoying the sort of lavish lifestyle that you would expect of a self-made billionaire from Croydon. He naturally had 3 massive yachts, a helicopter, a Gulfstream G550 jet, that is a big-ass jet, and the complete collection of Simon Whistler decal stickers, which I imagine he stuck on the back of his G550. And he also enjoyed inviting his friends, including Beyonce and Kate Moss, to his wild toga parties. Is that true? For his 50th birthday bash in 2002, he splashed out on a £7 million toga party in Cyprus, in which he got the opportunity to dress up as Emperor Nero and hobnob with the likes of Tom Jones, Lionel Richie, and Rob Stewart. The latter was reportedly paid £750,000 to play a brief 45-minute set at the party. Let's hope Rob was in fine voice. You could have got a whole 90 minutes of the Wurzels at that price. 220 party guests were flown down at Green's expense from Luton to Cyprus, and the in-flight safety video had a curiously distinctive touch. The video depicted a boggled-eyed pilot introduced by a narrator who revealed the captain's name is Charles. Some of you may not have been this high with Charlie before, but for others it's a new experience. Oh, he's making a cocaine joke, isn't he? All right. Something tells me that some of his guests may have been treated to a bit more than champagne and caviar and jelly deals when they arrived. Oh my god, this is some intense-ass party. Mr. Green's fancy 50th birthday present from his wife was a Monopoly set crafted from solid gold and featuring all of his own real-life retail acquisitions on the board. This is so crazy, I'm kind of like, oh. So crazy! Tina must have made a mistake when she placed the order, though, because the board also included chains owned by the Arcadia Group, which of course belonged to her, and not Mr. Green at all, of course. Still, it's the thought that counts. Yeah, she's like, whoops, don't know how that happened. Mr. Green had become so famous by this point that he was the original choice to host the UK version of The Apprentice, but he turned down the offer and suggested Alan Sugar would be a better candidate. And he wasn't just being courted by superstar celebrities and TV studios. The government were big fans too. In 2006, he was given a knighthood for services to the retail industry after a recommendation by then Prime Minister Tony Blair, who described Green as the person who thought up the dream and dreamt the dream into reality.
Have you ever had a dream that
That is possibly the most Tony Blair quote I've ever heard. The person who thought up the dream and dreamt the dream into reality. It's a terrible Tony Blair impression, but you know what he sounds like. A few years later, in 2010, another Prime Minister, David Cameron, asked Mr. Green to undertake an efficiency review of government spending. Efficient government spending, please. Mr. Green's scathing report highlighted waste across several departments and spending categories, although critics observed it was heavy on bullet points and light on useful detail. Other critics argued that Mr. Green was the wrong choice to undertake such an important review in the first place, as a few other things had happened in the interim which didn't seem to cast the King of the High Street in a particularly good light. Early in 2005, in his position as CEO of the Arcadia Group, Mr. Green decided to pay a dividend to the owner of the company. The figure was £1.3 billion and it was described as the biggest paycheck in British corporate history. And the fact that the owner was his wife, Tina, who didn't have to pay any UK tax, That's a nice bonus. Of course, he wasn't doing anything illegal here, although it was later argued that he was paying himself dividends far in excess of company profits, and the whole thing was effectively bankrolled by big loans. Dude, allegedly. Whoa, alleged, yeah, allegedly. That is a fairly major accusation. A few years later, Mr. Green is reported to have spent £500,000 in legal fees to obtain an injunction against the Telegraph newspaper from printing allegations about Green's alleged sexual and racial abuse of his employers. Dude. The paper was, allegedly, the paper was allowed to print the story of an injunction being obtained by a powerful businessman, but wasn't legally allowed to reveal his identity. Yeah, this, I think I mentioned in a recent video, like freedom of speech, freedom of press in the UK. It's kind of a bit of a joke. I just gotta look up the Press Freedom Index, because you'd think like, yeah, UK, it's gotta be near the top, right? Press freedom. Of course, Norway, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, top guys, legends. You gotta go all the way down to number 35 for the United Kingdom, just sitting above Trinidad and Tobago, countries of note that beat the UK in terms of press freedom. Slovakia, where a journalist was fucking murdered a few years ago. Liechtenstein, which is an absolute monarchy. South Africa. Suriname. Yeah, UK. It's embarrassing. Get your together. So you can basically obtain an injunction through the courts which says that a UK-based institution which you injunct against, like the Telegraph or the Guardian, can't publish a story. You can even get something called a super injunction, which says, like in this case, he didn't get a super injunction, he got a regular injunction, which says that, a big businessman has done this, but you can't name him. A super injunction would say that you can't even say that an injunction was gained. It's insane. It's got slightly better in recent years because there was this justice who was very pro for it, and it's a long story, but it is f***ing embarrassing to be 35. So it wasn't allowed to reveal his identity. It was a waste of £500,000, though the very next day in the House of Lords, a Labour peer called Peter Hain exercised parliamentary privilege to name Mr. Green as the subject of the allegations, prompting an immediate call from some MPs for the revocation of Green's knighthood. Little is known for sure about the allegations, except that one former black employee, a brand director by the name of Wesley Taylor, walked out of his job after alleging Green had used racially abusive language on multiple occasions. Dude, it's not okay. Green denied making racist remarks, but the matter was settled out of court. Allegedly, weren't you like raving about the Irishman? It's not that big of a stretch, allegedly, is it? Allegedly. There have also been repeated allegations over the years that the Arcadia Group is happy to use sweatshop labor for the manufacturing of its high street sportswear range. Well, that's not unique, is it? It's bad, but it's not unique. The Sunday Times reported that the laborers in factories in Mauritius were working for 12 hours a day for just 22p per hour, while the Daily Mail recently reported that it would cost a Sri Lankan seamstress over a month's wages to actually buy one of the hundreds of Beyonce-branded leggings that they were crafting every day. Mr. Green has always denied these allegations. But one thing that Mr. Green can't deny is that things had turned very sour for BHS by the year 2015. Profits had been steadily falling for years, although this didn't seem to affect Green's desire to continue extracting large sums of money from the company, despite the fact that it actually stopped making a profit after 2010. The company had also been left with a rather alarming hole in its pension fund to the tune of about £571 million, which must have been particularly nettlesome for the employees left short, who had been paying for the plan while watching Mr. Green and his family pay themselves big dividends of £420 million. But never mind that. Green had a cunning plan. He would sell BHS and let some other sucker deal with the problem. In 2015, 15 years after buying BHS for $200 million and allegedly turning it into $1 billion empire, Green sold BHS for the princely sum of £1. His choice of buyer was quite surprising. The 11,000 staff working at BHS who were hoping for a turnaround in fortune were possibly a little disappointed that the company had been sold to a group of investors called Retail Acquisitions, creative naming, led by a guy called Dominic Chappelle, who had zero experience in retail but did have a long history of driving companies into bankruptcy. If you work there, you're going to be like, we're getting liquidated for sure. Less than 12 months later, during which time Dominic appeared to splash out a few million quid on boats and sports cars before disappearing for a well-earned break in the Bahamas, BHS filed for administration, leaving 11,000 staff out of work and 20,000 pension plans with a massive deficit. Oh shit. Mr. Green wasn't completely off the hook though. In 2016, he was hauled before an inquiry by the British Work and Pension Select Committee to face questions from MPs on why he appeared to have systematically extracted hundreds of millions of pounds from BHS while paying very little tax and weakening both the company and the pension pot to the point of inevitable collapse for both. I kind of like these select committees where MPs question business people. I get why they exist, but they are a bit of a farce. Like, it's like Mark Zuckerberg being brought in front of Congress in the US. This is the UK equivalent, and it's just as much of a joke as it is in the US. Like, they just don't know what they're talking about because they're career politicians. Green originally threatened not to turn up, claiming that MPs were a bunch of wankers who were strongly biased against him. Of course, they are strongly biased against him. That is true. And I think this is the first time I'm like, okay, yeah, I agree. I don't know if I'd show up in his position. I'm just going to be raked over the coals for no particular benefit. And you don't have to go. It's not like you're being subpoenaed to a court. They're just asking you to go. It's going to look bad if you don't go, but you don't have to go, I think. But in the wake of renewed calls for his knighted to be revoked, he really likes that knighted, doesn't he? Green did eventually decide to face the panel, but displayed very little humility or regret. Throughout the 6-hour session, he was angry, spiky, arrogant, and disrespectful. At one point, he interrupted proceedings to blurt out to a Conservative MP on the panel, "Sir, do you mind not looking at me like that all the time? It's really disturbing. You just want to stare at me?"
Daddy, chill.
It may sound a bit tame, but it's surely the parliamentary version of, "What the f*** are you staring at, you knobhead?"
What the hell is even that?
Yeah, I mean, it's Parliament. You've got to be polite. That would be like, whoa, whoa! Also, it's Britain. Mr. Green did concede that the gap in the pension plan was his fault. He said, "It wasn't dealt with. We're here, and we have to find a solution. It's not my style to blame anybody else." But then he followed this up with a long list of people he blamed.
Fuck you, and fuck you. Who's next?
For failing to let him know the true extent of the problem. Uh-oh. Several months later, Green finally agreed to pay £363 million as a settlement to help plug the gap in the pension pot. It seems like the least you could do. In very recent years, both Mr. Green's High Street empire and his wife's Arcadia Group seem to be crumbling rapidly. Even before coronavirus struck, the Green family had managed to lose well over $3 billion in their own net worth, with many critics observing that the stores have fallen rapidly behind competitors because of a stubborn refusal to fully embrace digital technology and online shopping. It's reported that Mr. Green could barely even figure out how to send an email, and the most tech he ever got was sending a text message from one of his 2 ancient Nokia phones. Of course, things plummeted to crisis point during the virus time, and the future of the Arcadia Group seems very murky indeed. If I worked there, I'd be like, oh, my pension. Oh, not again, this again, Even at the height of the lockdown, Arcadia was still generating unsavory headlines when it was revealed that they had exploited a small loophole in the UK government's furlough scheme, which would allow the company to rake in a few more million quid while leaving their redundant employees high and dry with far less pay than they were entitled. After being branded morally and ethically bankrupt, Arcadia's initial fiery response was to defend their actions by claiming, "Our actions in response to COVID-19 are no different from most other retailers in the UK." Oh my god, we're on the last page. This has been so long, but I like it. I'm enjoying this one. I enjoy most of these. We haven't done any about baseball yet, so, I mostly do enjoy it. It turns out that this was complete bollocks, as no other retailer was trying to exploit the loophole and screw over employees in this way. They later reversed the decision with a humble apology, and the UK government swiftly patched up the loophole. Today, even these giant companies, and here on Business Plays, we're often saying, yeah, companies aren't people, they don't make ethical decisions. It seems like most of them did in this case. Today, Mr. Green has somehow still managed to cling on to his precious knighted, despite the House of Commons approving a measure to ask the House forfeiture community to strip Green of the title. We spoiled this at the beginning. It now seems likely that he'll lose if those allegations of sexual harassment, bullying and racism are ever proved in court. But will he go down in history as the king of the UK High Street, or Sir Shifty? There's no doubt that he has an undeniable talent for drumming up investment and sorting out lucrative deals. Anyone who can make the leap from flogging a few cheap jeans to becoming a self-made multi-billionaire has certainly got something going for them. Yeah, this is often, it's not black and white. You can be a good businessman and be a complete dick, allegedly. In fact, I'd often say that those things are not mutually exclusive, but in fact they're probably often correlated. But it could be argued that Mr. Green's biggest strength of all was stripping companies bare of all their assets, siphoning off obscene dividends from his wife's tax haven account in Monaco, and then tossing away the bare bones of the company that had brutally ravaged, leaving tens of thousands of employees hanging out to dry. Considering all the jobs now at stake, nobody wants to see the Arcadia Group implode. If only some bright spark with the gift of the gab could seize the opportunity to snap up the crumbling empire at a bargain basement price and make himself a billionaire. Oh, it's come full circle! And the ads will come full circle now as you finish this and you click below and you subscribe to Skillshare. That would be great. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. MPs were a bunch of wankers.